up and hold our leaders accountable for their actions, which is what they're trying to do in Iran, but they're being killed for it. So I think we are that example. We strive to be that example. There's no expectation of perfection. Things are going to happen, right, but we have to make sure that we right our ship and handle ourselves appropriately so that we have that standing to talk to other people around the world.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and as a country in America, we are having protests, but we are still connected to the rest of the world. Unlike the situation in Iran, where folks there feel like they're disconnected because there's no phones, there's no airlines. So when that happens, how legally, how can people take a stand against the government when the government does things like this?
Well, unfortunately, in Iran, they don't have the same legal options that we have here. And that's part of the problem, because the supreme leader and the regime over there, they took away the internet, they took away the phones. You can't fly in and out of the country. I mean, everybody, even friends of Iran, are now leaving. India is pulling all of their ambassadors and everyone that they have over there. There's a plane that's leaving now with 300 people on there from India that's going back to New Delhi because they don't feel safe over there. So everybody is in danger. And that's a very significant and serious situation. I don't think we're at that level here in this country, and I think that we need to recognize that. Yes, there are things happening that should not be happening, but it's a much different situation because America is a great place that sometimes gets it wrong, sometimes crosses the line, but we have the ability to push back and hopefully bring balance back to our nation so that we can show other nations how to do it, because they have no legal rights over there. You know, they can't go to court and say, you know, I want access to my phone or to my internet or to a plane. They're told this is how you're going to behave, this is how you're going to think, and if you don't agree with that and you speak up about it, you may get killed. There may be a hanging, a public hanging, to make an example out of you, and that just can't happen nowadays in 2026 in this world.
When looking at the situation in Minneapolis, a lot of legal scholars are saying it's very much a battle of federalism versus, states' ability to do policing versus the federal officials. From your legal background and looking at the National Guard situation with Governor Walz, what do you think some of the conversations are being had at the state level from a legal perspective of A, how they can handle this investigation without federal resources, and how do they prepare for these type of, things getting out of hand or a standoff between state and federal officials? Like, what are some of those conversations that are being had, you think, legally?
Yes, it's a balancing act, because what they have to do is, if you're the governor, if you're Governor Walz right now, what you're trying to do is push back, but not too hard to where Trump does insert the Insurrection Act, because that would give this Donald Trump, it would give him the authority to bring in not just the National Guard, but the military into Minnesota. If they can say, if Donald Trump says, we believe that Minnesota is not allowing us to move forward and to fulfill the federal laws, then they can move forward with that Insurrection Act and bring in the military to enforce those federal laws. So Governor Walz does not want that to happen. But at the same time, he doesn't want Donald Trump using ICE to run rampant in his state and cause this kind of heartache and this kind of pain and uncomfortable situations that's happening there. So what you're trying to do is be compliant to the point that they don't call in the military, but also push back so that ICE doesn't take over these neighborhoods. Just keep in mind, right now there's 2,000 to 3,000 ICE officers between St. Paul and Minneapolis. There's only about 600 police officers in those areas. So wow, you're talking about multiple, 3 times the amount of police officers. So if 600 police officers could police that area, why do you need 2,000 ICE officers there? That doesn't even make sense. So there clearly is a takeover happening. So Governor Walz is in a tough spot of trying to push back, but not too much, because it can go even further and they can bring in the actual military. And I know you do not want military personnel patrolling the streets in the United States, because that can lead to problems. They're just not trained to do that. They're trained to deal with enemy combatants, and that's not who's in our neighborhoods. Even if they're not here legally, they're not an enemy combatant, and you shouldn't treat people in the United States as such. But if you're in the Army, that's what you're trained to do. Right. So how do you get out of that mentality or that headspace And that's where the problem lies.
All right, Dante, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to take a break here, and after the break, we'll be back with our coverage on Iran and Minneapolis and Tony's rundown. We'll be right back. All right, we're just taking a live look outside of the White House, and Tony, it is so windy out there. You can really see the flag just flapping around.
Well, I'll tell you, so
look at his hair.
My hairline is a little bit deeper usually. My hair got pushed to the front because of all that wind and that beautiful cold we're seeing. We've had a couple of days where it was between, I think it was like 48 and 55 degrees. Now we're back in the 20s. It's like, no, this is why I moved here, to have a little bit more temperate than the Boston area. So please, I mean, we have to get some good weather back, just good aura, because I cannot stand being in the cold it is. Where's Mike Thomas, our weather? Because we need some good vibes, Mike. Please give it to me.
Yeah, this is like bone-chilling weather over here.
That wind chill.
Great way to plug in our forecast. You can get that on Fox Local as well to prepare for the week ahead and how to get dressed in the morning. Now, our coverage continues when it comes to Minneapolis and Iran. And joining us now to talk about Iran, the situation here with Minneapolis and the United States, is political commentator Ronnie. Thank you so much. Welcome to our show. Now, full name, I'm sorry, Ronnie Mova, and you're also an Iranian American and Jewish background. So what's your reaction after seeing how the situation is being handled in Iran, where folks are disconnected from the rest of the world?
My heart really connects with everyone who's out in the streets. I can personally tell you this is a very emotional moment for Iranians around the world, within the nation and outside of Iran. Me, myself, I was born in Tehran, and at age 2 weeks old, my parents basically had to flee the country for our religion, being Jewish. I support and I love everything that our president is doing, and I am really rooting for the people in Iran. I hope there are no more lives lost so that we can overthrow this tyrannical government that should have never been there in the first place.
When thinking about this moment again, I'm sending prayers to you and to everybody in Iran. Again, thinking about this is so personal, and I really appreciate you sharing that. When looking at the history of the last 20 years or so, there have been uprisings. There's been some sporadic kind of back and forth between the regime and citizens. It seems now that this is a lot more widespread. And do you feel, based on your history and analysis, that this time it could be different and the regime could be toppled?
First of all, I don't feel the fire within the hearts of the citizens of Iran is any bigger than it ever was in the last 20 years to overthrow this government. I think it is the international politics that is going to finally allow this uprising to be successful and to overthrow the government. I think a lot of it has to do with what has happened in the world recently. We had what happened October 6th in Israel. Israel stood up for itself. You have Israel trying to protect its region, the whole Middle East. So the Middle East is on high alert that good ideology has to spread, and we're not going to stand up for any more BS with terrorism, with these Islamic extremist governments that are just trying to fill their pockets for oil. That's on one end. On the Western front, you have Donald Trump, who's in power, who's doing a lot of enabling of good in the world. I mean, we saw what he did in Venezuela. He kept his word, he came through. It's actually a big extension of the Monroe Doctrine. He's basically promised that he's going to protect the region around the United States, North America, South America, and he came through. And now with all of this snowballing, I don't think that the Islamic regime has any legs to stand on. I think Donald Trump, Israel, NATO, they're going to come through for the people.
And Ronnie, when we think about it, when the airlines aren't working, the phones are not working, and there's no way to connect to the rest of society, for us as Americans, that's something really foreign to think about, but that is a reality in Iran currently. I mean, that is just heartbreaking to even imagine being in that situation. What do you want to say to folks that are watching or have relatives that are in Iran right now? Any piece of advice?
I would just trust our people, our brains, our hearts. Hopefully, the way we do protest, it will be in a way which will not have Iranians killed. The protests are very necessary. If the citizens sit at home in Iran, there will be no overthrow. So the show of force and power has to be there. Hopefully, we'll do it in a safe manner. And I hope when this is all over, we could all be visiting Iran for vacations and spring break. It's only a matter of time that it's going to happen.
If we look to that future and there is, this regime is finally toppled, what are some of the main issues that will have to be addressed on the ground that citizens are really concerned about, whether it be economically or socially? And in your mind, what could that new leadership look like from a governmental perspective as well as a relationship with the rest of the world?
I believe a lot of it has to do with who is actually going to rise to the top in power. I did have the beautiful opportunity while I attended UCLA to meet with Reza Pahlavi, who is the Shah's son. And he had a lot of beauty, a lot of leadership in him. I don't know if he is really made out to necessarily be the ruler that his father once was, but the way he speaks, if he is a team that moves in, he doesn't speak about himself being ruler. It's not going to be tyrannical. He talks about building a team to go in there because he actually cares about the people of Iran. So when you have someone who's speaking from his heart and actually cares about his people, you know that you're going to have the top people rise who will take care of the country. And I believe right now, with all the sanctions, the Iranians are suffering. Everyone there is suffering. But this is a way to get people out to protest. I mean, I think that's all going to flip very quickly once there's new leadership. I think there's going to be a lot of trade pacts, a lot of good things coming out of Iran for Iranians and for the rest of the world. I don't think anything good ever came out of this regime being in place for 45 years. The only things that have flourished are maybe domestically in Iran, headscarf sales, and internationally, terrorism.
So when you close your eyes and you imagine a perfect Iran, what does that look like for you?
I imagine where my culture comes from. It's a land that has a beautiful demographic of people, a lot of doctors, scientists, engineers. We were the forefront of architecture, art, medicine for the longest time going back in history. And it's just been bleak for the last 45 years. I think the only superstructures that were built in Iran in the last 45 years were maybe the palaces for the tyrannical regime who runs the country. But I really think it will become westernized. I believe it will become super democratic. I think everything will blossom. I think they'll have glass towers going up. I believe that people will be enjoying life the way most countries do in the world that are first world, and they deserve it, and they will have it, and the whole world will enjoy it.
And what do you think, in your mind, that means for the entire Middle Eastern region if there is, a toppling or at least some type of movement against this regime? How do you think that could look from an international perspective, relationships in the Middle East going forward and with the U.S.?
This is definitely a wake-up call to all the troublemakers out there who are making money off of sending mercenaries, terrorists around the world, not only the Middle East. I think the leadership of many countries will change their mindset as to how they conduct their business in the world. And if they don't, I believe their governments will be toppled as well.
All right, Ronnie, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing your own perspective and really appreciate your insight. We're going to take a quick break here. After the break, we're going to be back on Primetime Live Zone with Tony's Rundown. All right, best time of the show. Tony's Rundown, what do you got in store for us?
Well, I didn't expect that. I mean, that is true. Listen, this is one little piece of this show, but I'll try to bring some even more energy tonight. I have a lot more positivity and confidence now after that comment. So we're going to start, of course, in Minneapolis, where immigration enforcement concerns are now affecting the school day. Minneapolis Public Schools says it is expanding online learning options for families who don't feel safe sending their kids to class in person right now, amid heightened anxiety in immigrant communities and concerns about federal enforcement activity nearby. The district says the goal is to keep learning consistent while families navigate the uncertainty. Right now, Minneapolis is planning on having these options extended for at least another month or so. That's one thing to watch as this situation continues to unfold. And that law enforcement push for immigration is also playing out in the courts as well. A federal appeals court today ruled that the judge who ordered the release of activist Mahmoud Khalil didn't have the jurisdiction, saying his challenges must move through the immigration court system first. The decision backs the Trump administration's position that these cases should proceed through immigration courts before being taken up in the federal courts. And now Mahmoud Khalil's case now continues through that process. Now in the world of the arts and humanities, a major federal funding story with political stakes. The National Endowment for the Humanities has announced a new round of grants, roughly $75 million across 84 projects nationwide. The New York Times reports the awards lean heavily towards programs centered on American civics and U.S. history, including projects tied to the founding era, major political figures, and initiatives related to the upcoming 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. That's one thing to watch as well as we go into America 250. These grants go to museums, universities, archives, and historical organizations for work that includes preservation, research, exhibitions, and public programming. The Times also notes that the grant round is unfolding amid ongoing political fights over the NEH itself, with Republicans in the Trump-aligned policy world arguing the agency should prioritize projects tied to national identity and civics, and some conservatives continue to push broader efforts to reduce or eliminate what they view as ideological federal arts and humanities funding. Turning to the world of business and the economy, the future of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is back in focus. The Trump administration is now weighing next steps that can include moving towards an IPO and continuing to bring forth long-running efforts to prioritize the two major mortgage giants after years under federal conservatorship. Analysts are watching this closely because the companies back a large share of U.S. home loans, meaning any major shift could eventually affect how mortgages are financed and priced. Of course, remember, they did become under federal control during the 2007-2008 housing crisis. It was one of the major parts of that story years ago. It's like almost 20 years now.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Now turning very close to your wallet, Spotify is raising prices again in the U.S. Reports say the premium individual plan will rise to $12.99 a month starting in February, with increases across other tiers to be announced as well. Spotify says subscribers will be notified as the pricing changes roll out. I tell you, again, we need more costs. We have inflation already. And speaking of Spotify, we're going to talk some music now. Harry Styles is officially back. He has announced a new album titled Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally. His first album in nearly 4 years, set for release on March 6, 2026. Reports say it is a 12-track project produced with longtime collaborator Kid Harpoon, and pre-orders and merch launched within minutes of the announcement. Continuing with celebrity headlines, a new report claims Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner, my favorite relationship in Hollywood, by the way, have been living together for more than a year, with one unnamed source describing them as quote-unquote basically married already. Neither has publicly confirmed any engagement or marriage at this time, though. In the streaming world, a report is coming out that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon struck a deal tied to their Netflix film The Rip that boosted pay for crew members working on the production, including percentage if the film performs well, extending benefits just beyond the top line talent. Which is really cool about this is that they actually made Netflix change their policies to do this and give the crew more of a share, basically, of the profit. So a wonderful story
Yay.
from two Boston-based stars and inspirations of mine, Syeda. And finally, another positive story tonight, a rare climate story. Scientists are studying a glacier that appears to be growing, even as most glaciers around the world continue to shrink due to climate change. Researchers say the goal is now to understand what local conditions are driving that growth, including snowfall accumulation and regional temperature patterns, and whether it can offer clues about how certain ice systems behave differently than the global trend.
Wow.
So maybe that glacier increasing is part of why it's so cold here tonight. Just saying. Maybe something like it's the drifting winds are coming off it, Syed. I don't know. But it's fascinating what we've seen from the Biden administration now into the Trump administration with climate issues. We see the EPA is doing a lot of rollbacks on things such as different air quality standards for particle counts and taking into account lung disease and how it saves people's lives. The calculations have changed. It's going to be interesting to see in the next 5-10 years how electrification, climate-based business, and just natural courses of things will happen, because we're seeing, whether it be in the U.S., people are moving more inland now, whether it be in Florida or California, you're seeing wildfires, especially we're over the year now since the horrible wildfires in Pasadena and in L.A. County. So all these things are going to be very much a Gen Z and millennial issue to pick up in the years ahead. But a situation like this, glaciers are growing, maybe there is some reprieve. Maybe we can get our ozone back and we can figure out a way forward.
Absolutely, and I know we're complaining about the cold temperatures, but I also feel like this is when it should be cold like this.
Right. So you know what? Exactly.
Maybe it's a good thing. And
Maybe the climate's aligning again.
Even last year, when I was living in New York City, we were having fires there, wildfires, and it was it was a very scary situation because obviously a place like New York City, when conditions were getting really, really dry in the weather, wildfires started happening in New York City, in the Bronx, and it was popping up across like that, just like in California. So obviously we want the weather to be what it's supposed to be, and you know, with climate change and everything like that. And on a lighter note, all those stories about Harry Styles, you know,
a lot of entertainment tonight.
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
Rundown. I really heavily focused it in one area.
And it's about time because he hasn't really had an album out in such a long time.
He hasn't.
So until that song that was like "As It Was."
Right.
One, you know,
well, now like a lot of artists will release one single, for example. So again, in this new streaming era, Spotify era, again, I hate that they're raising their prices, but it is a major spot for music. And what's interesting too is we're seeing Bruno Mars put out some new material, and he got accused of having the same sound and things of that. He did, And I guess a hater online, again, you got to love the online hate, said that your sounds are all the same, and he said something to the effect of you don't know what it's like to be famous at all, kind of like a clapback, which is pretty strong. And then looking at more Hollywood news, the Timothy Chalamet Kylie Jenner romance is a thing. It just
that's your favorite one.
It is, because I just love the two of them. How just ambitious they both are. They're both building their careers. She's doing social media and her beauty company, as well as some parts of Hollywood. You have Timothy Chalamet, who may get his first Oscar this year after getting a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Award. He is on the rise, and this couple, they have found a way to balance that out and to have moments together and just keep that relationship going. And what's really interesting about all of this too is like kind of looking at when he was at the speech the other night during the Golden Globes, he mentioned "to my partner of 3 years."
Yeah.
And
not
that
girlfriend.
phrase, and that phrasing has been very popular among millennials and Gen Z, where it is a partnership. And both these individuals are absolutely kicking butt in their own domains, in Hollywood, in social media, in business. And they really represent that partnership. They're both taking on the world together.
See,
and I love that language shift.
because it's not cool to say girlfriend and boyfriend anymore, because it's very 90s now.
It is.
This is my girlfriend. Like partner sounds more mature.
It's kind of like elementary, like very much
Girlfriend.
like back back when we were kids. Oh, like girlfriend, boyfriend. It's like no, you're both taking on the world together.
Yeah.
You're much more than friends, obviously, and you're taking on those things and those challenges. And we're seeing a shift where relationships, whether it be parenting or with no children in the marriage, that it's about a partnership. Everybody's carrying their own weight, and the gendered stereotypes are going away because of that. So I love the language is catching up with that, and this relationship, they show what it really means in
exactly,
practice.
and there was an AI image that apparently went viral and people believed it. It said that on her seat for the Golden Globes, it was Kylie Jenner Chalamet.
No, really?
And that wasn't real. And I think now people are just, these AI images, they go viral. They're like, oh my God, like they're getting married. And it's like, actually, it wasn't really an actual thing. It was definitely an AI generated thing. And people are calling her, quote unquote, right now, Kylie Jenner is the most popular girl at school, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And she's doing great. I mean, Kylie is definitely having a moment right now. And a lot of people don't care anymore that she came from the reality world, because she's so successful.
Exactly.
And there's something about them. They both look similar and they look good together, like when they sit next to each other. Similar heights.
Very wholesome.
Yes.
I just think like how he feels about her, and just like the amount of love that's there. I think it's a great thing, and I'm looking forward to the Oscars because I want him to win. He's so passionate about being an actor, and one of the things that he treats acting like a sport and wants to be the best, and he talks about it and he's open about it.
Wants to be the greats.
I love that. Again, you border on the arrogance piece, where it's like, oh, maybe he's being too much. No, he's backing it up, and you know what? I like people that are open about their dreams.
Yeah, exactly. He said.
Sorry to go so long on that, but I love this story, and I had to add a few of my 2 cents, my opinions on this one.
Exactly, all of us did. Well, they're basically married right now, and he was nominated with Leonardo DiCaprio in the category too.
That's going to be a good battle.
That's a big contender to beat. And again, the Oscars are apparently being streamed this year.
They will be, and then
that's interesting.
Yeah. And then I think it's in 5 years it'll be on YouTube fully, which is going to be an interesting dynamic with the changing of TV. I was just at a conference this morning about streaming and the future of TV, and and it's all going to be about YouTube, which we are on right now. So it's all rolling at once. Exactly, yes. But again, that's all streaming. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And as much as I love the analog era, I think I have to accept that might not be fully happening anytime soon.
So not fully on. They're not fully on YouTube this year.
No. So it'll be. I think it's 2029. I think was the report a couple months ago.
So not this year.
No.
Okay.
So it'll be carried. It'll be carried through ABC for the next 3 years. I think they're going to go through the 100th or 101st Academy Awards will be on YouTube.
Absolutely. Of course, we want to pivot over to the ICE shooting in Minneapolis. That's, again, raising tensions across the country and at the White House, apparently.
Yes.
Caroline Levitt really getting into it with a journalist. Let's take a listen to that.
Was executing a targeted operation against a Venezuelan illegal alien who was unlawfully present in the country, who fled by car and then fled by foot. And when this ICE agent tried to detain the individual, 3 more of his comrades came rushing out of a house and started ambushing and attacking the ICE agent. They used a shovel or a broom to smash his face in. And so yes, that agent had to use self-defense and take up his weapon to protect his own life. That is what's happening on the streets of Minneapolis. That's what's happening on the streets, unfortunately, of these Democrat-run cities and states where you have elected officials who are encouraging such violence against our brave men and women in law enforcement.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions. First, a follow-up on one of my colleagues who asked you about the president's interview with Reuters. You said that he was joking about canceling the elections, but Americans for generations have fought and died for democracy, for this democracy. Are you saying that the president finds the idea of canceling elections funny?
Andrew, were you in the room? No, you weren't. I was in the room. I heard the conversation. And only someone like you would take that so seriously and pose it as a question in that way.
Second,
Caroline,
next
Thank you, Caroline. Senator Elizabeth Warren said that the president called her earlier this week to discuss caps on credit card interest rates. I'm curious, would the president work with her and other Democrats in Congress on a legislative fix to this issue?
I think the president would work in good faith with anyone in Congress for a good legislative fix that would benefit the American people. And that's precisely why he called Senator Warren earlier this week on that matter.
Thanks, Caroline. Earlier, you were just defending ICE agents generally, and earlier on, Secretary Noem spoke to the media, and she said, among other things, that they are doing everything correctly. 32 people died in ICE custody last year. 170 U.S. citizens were detained by ICE, and Renee Good got in the head and killed by an ICE agent. How does that equate to them doing everything correctly?
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my
Yeah.
opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack, you're not a reporter, you're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat. But you're pretending like you're a journalist, but you're a left-wing activist. And the question that you just raised and your answer proves your bias. You should be reporting on the facts. You should be reporting on the cases. Do you have the numbers of how many American citizens were killed at the hands of illegal aliens who ICE is trying to remove from this country? I bet you don't. I bet you didn't even read up on those stories. I bet you never even read about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungray or all of the innocent Americans who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens in this country. And the brave men and women of ICE are doing everything in their power to remove those heinous individuals and make our communities safer. And shame on people like you in the media who have a crooked view and have a biased view and pretend like you're a real honest journalist. Kelly.
Caroline, 2 quick questions on Iran. I wanted to ask first, just if you can say, how close was the president to potentially launching strikes last night, and was it the Gulf states that convinced him not to do that, as some in the region there have said?
Well, look, Kelly, I know there's been a lot of speculation in the media about what the president is going to do at any given moment or any given night. And I would say a lot of these stories, to be honest with you, I've been reading them, and they've been based on anonymous sources who are pretending or guessing to know the president's thinking. The truth is, only President Trump knows what he's going to do, and a very, very small team of advisors are read into his thinking on that. And as I just told you, he continues to closely monitor the situation on the ground in Iran. And as we saw yesterday, he had heard that the killings and executions would stop. And we have seen 800 people, their lives have been spared as a result of that. The president continues to closely monitor, but also keep all of his options on the table.
Caroline, two separate questions.
Sure.
On the Machado meeting first, what is it that the president feels that he needs to hear from her or from the opposition party that he hadn't heard prior to today, or he wanted to hear in the meeting, to be able to convince him to commit to some sort of a timeline for elections?
I'm not sure the president is going into such the meeting with expectations like you just laid out, Fran. I don't think he needs to hear anything from Ms. Machado. I think generally this is a meeting that the president was willing to take and willing to accept, to meet Ms. Machado in person and to just have a frank and positive discussion about what's taking place in Venezuela. That's all.
And on the subject of Greenland, Jeff Landry, the president's special envoy for Greenland, wasn't in the White House meeting yesterday. Can you say why that was and what exactly the role he is playing in these conversations about acquiring Greenland?
Well, the Vice President and the Secretary of State were present for that meeting. And the meeting, it was a productive meeting. It was a good meeting. And in that meeting, the two sides agreed to really establish a working group of individuals who will continue to have technical talks on the acquisition of Greenland. Those talks will take place, I'm told, every 2 to 3 weeks. So this is a conversation the administration intends to keep having with the Danes and with the respected delegation from Greenland. But the president has made his priority quite clear. He wants the United States to acquire Greenland. He thinks it's in our best national security to do that.
There have been multiple instances of American citizens being detained by ICE, and I'm wondering what the administration is asking the agency to do. What steps is the administration asking the agency to take to ensure that Americans are not wrongly arrested?
Obviously, ICE is focused on detaining individuals who are unlawfully present in the country. And there have been hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens who have been arrested and detained and deported from this country by ICE over the course of the last year. And that's their intention, and that is their goal.
Elizabeth. Thank you, Caroline. One follow-up on Greenland. You reportedly sent troops over there. Does that change at all what the president is doing on this? And then a second question. Yesterday, in a Senate help hearing, Senator Josh Hawley repeatedly asked a doctor if men can get pregnant, and she did not directly answer that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to your first question on Greenland, I don't think troops in Europe impact the president's decision-making process, nor does it impact his goal of the acquisition of Greenland at all. To your second question, I mean, anyone in their right mind with common sense who's speaking honestly and candidly will say that men cannot get pregnant. And I think I can attest to that myself. So thank you all very much.
All right, Caroline Levitt, really going in on that reporter in the room there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and we've seen it with Caroline Levitt, we've also seen it in past Biden administration, where, and even President Obama's administration, where there is sometimes those combustible moments in the press briefing room. And one of the things, I mean, I didn't like that the press secretary asked the question of the reporter, that you're basically asking for an opinion. Like when you said, hey, well, why do you think that happened? That exchange just could have been an answer from that. You could have said, hey, maybe you should report on this, but I think that was totally unnecessary, that question being asked, because
her asking the question to the journalist.
Because then you're basically saying, I want your opinion, but then I'm saying you're biased at the same time. It's kind of like you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
If you want it to be an unbiased question, and again, he was just listing out statistics of, hey, this is what's been happening. What's the response from the administration? How they going to fix that potentially? That's not exactly a biased question. When you ask for an opinion and he gives that opinion, then it can be biased. But I think asking that question was not the right move to do to create that moment. But we do have a lot of combustible moments in the press briefing room across administrations, where every day there's briefings. There's a lot of very distinct questions, and it's one person up there.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was traveling overseas in Europe, in the European Union, there's four stands for 4 different press secretaries that get up and talk to all the European media. So again, it's a different flow how we do it in the States, but again, the goal is to keep it at least somewhat civil in there.
Yeah, keep it civil. I mean, I understand it's a really stressful job. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You have to answer to everyone and for
Right.
everyone and for the president, but then you are making the big bucks there.
Yeah, doing well.
So
Again,
you can't feel too bad
exactly.
for these people.
You got to keep it civil in there. One final thing, interesting question about the Elizabeth Warren call. Not only are we seeing Elizabeth Warren making phone calls to the president about some of the economic proposals like banning private equity from buying single-family homes, some of the credit card cap rates for interest, that reverts back to a lot of Biden-era policies with the CFPB. So it's going to be interesting what Elizabeth Warren's influence may be on financial policies from the Oval Office. Again, President Trump can do a lot of executive orders through the CFPB that is still up and running at this point. And I think, secondly, Zohran Mamdani has also been texting President Trump about economic items back and forth. There's a direct line of communication between Mayor Mamdani and President Trump. As we saw back in December when he came to D.C. to meet with the president, they were very chummy. So it looks like there's some of this alignment.
I think Trump was chummy.
I mean, I think they both kind of were. They both were laughing. Again, and I think it really ties to the economic populism. And from my analysis, that's one of the only places I'm seeing Republicans break with President Trump, except for some of the more interventionism things from Rand Paul and more Tea Party members. But we're seeing a break on the economic policy. Like a lot of Republicans and more business class Republicans don't want to see the caps on credit card rates. They don't want to see the ban on private equity and homes. So it's going to be interesting, those alliances that are made in the future.
Yeah, I think that Trump respected the win because it quote unquote came out of nowhere, and he's also a New Yorker, and he respects somebody who comes from his city, and you know, just won overall because he wasn't the popular pick when he first started. But I think Trump also mentioned that a lot of Mamdani's views are quote out there, so I don't think he agrees with all of the things that Mamdani's saying, but it was more so not a bromance, but kind of Trump, you know, meeting in the middle somewhere. We're going to take a break here, and I know yesterday we mentioned how important mentors are.
Yes.
After the break, we're going to talk about how folks who love to teach can possibly become mentors with some news coming out of Prince George's County. So for that, we'll be right back.
Yep, all the time.
Just India and Pakistan. Okay, welcome to a live Zone Primetime again. We're back after the break.
We are. We've had a lot of great conversations tonight.
Controversial things happening in basketball, right?
Yeah, so we're talking about so a lot of things being tied to the NCAA, a lot of items being talked about, for example, NIL deals, players being paid. Well, there is now a breaking story where prosecutors are charging 20 people, including 15 NCAA athletes, in a point shaving scandal. So basically, what's happening is they're betting on these games, and a lot of players are either tanking, for example, to kind of keep the points down, or they're being involved in some of these prop bet issues as well, where, okay, you know, you're betting X player to score a basket in the fourth quarter, and they're not doing it, right? And the bet may be to not do it. That's the higher number of bets or money. I'm not the biggest sports gambler, so this is all kind of new to me. But point shaving is very much a very difficult part of the sports gambling scene and college athletics. It actually happened. One of the biggest cases. It actually impacted the movie Goodfellas in 1979. There was a case at Boston College with Ray Liotta's character Henry Hill, a real actual mobster in Goodfellas, and Robert De Niro's character Jimmy Burke were charged with point shaving and having one of the star players at Boston College was the ringleader and would basically play the game in a way to make sure the point shaving was done properly and everybody made their money. Now, sadly, of course, that's not sadly, but it ended sadly for everybody because it's not legal. And this is going to be an interesting debate as we see the NCAA continue to expand NIL opportunities. The Supreme Court ruled that players can get paid. The transfer portal, players will leave after a year. They'll go to 4 schools in their tenure. Does this type of case and the corruption behind it impact any regulations that Charlie Baker, who's the chairman of the NCAA, may make in the future for the transfer portal? Just for folks who may not know what that is, that's where students can go basically into free agency in college and trade out and change schools. They don't like how they're playing or they're not being played enough. They can go to a different school and get other opportunities. Is that going to be reformed? Is the NIL money for students to get paid, will that be reformed potentially? Or will there be laws passed to not prohibit, but to restrict some of the more intense forms of sports gambling? So that's one thing to watch as we focus on this breaking story. Again, 20 people charged in a point shaving scam involving the NCAA. This also dovetails with the Christmas time story with Chauncey Billups and some NBA players being charged in their scandal of basically fixing games. Chauncey Billups, a former NBA star and coach, as well as 3 players at the NBA level that were charged in a more sports gambling scheme at the NBA level. So this is just crazy. And again, it's going to open up a lot of can of worms about the future of NIL and NCAA ball.
Yeah, why would you want to do this to your future? Why?
For a couple
why
of bucks. I mean, there's also the part, could it be mafia related? Could it be organized crime where maybe they got in debt and they need to pay it off that way? That does happen to a lot of athletes, pro and amateur. So that's just one of the questions and the big debate.
Mafia related.
Oh yeah. So the case with Chauncey Billups and the NBA players where they got charged with sports gambling issues, it was actually tied to some of the major 5 families in New York: Gambino, Lucchese, the Colombo families, which is, of course, if you watch any mafia documentaries or The Sopranos or anything like that, you would know that it's a great series. You should watch it, seriously. It's one of the best series ever. Stranger Things is like number 3 on that list. Breaking Bad too. But again, this is something with the advent of these sports gambling apps, of NIL money where players can get paid. It's opening up a lot of opportunities, but it's also opening up a lot of chances for corruption. So this is one thing to watch as we go forward, but a very, very tough story.
Yeah, for sure. And when we think about it, this is why mentors are important.
Yes.
We need more teachers, more people willing to do the right thing, to make a living.
To model good behavior.
Of course, that brings us to Prince George's County, where they are hiring exactly those types of people, teachers, for their schools. So let's take a listen into that.
So I'm really excited to be here with all of these incredible leaders. I would also like those who are representing the school board to join us here on the stage. I appreciate you so much because we cannot do this job without a unified government, which includes our school board too. So I thank you so much, President Jackson or Chair Jackson, for your leadership, for your steady hand with our school system. Board Member Olivo, thank you so much for jumping in and really carrying a strong message for our Port Towns communities and those who sometimes are underserved and overlooked. Thank you for joining us today. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Sean Joseph.
Thank you. It is a great time to be in Prince George's County Public Schools, and Prince George's County in general. We have, I believe, the best leader in the country in Aisha Braveboy. Give her a round of applause for her vision and focus in her messaging. She was clear when we came in. We must collaborate. That we must be one Prince George's County Public Schools, unified, strong, and let's get it done on behalf of children. So charge heard loud and clear. Thank you so much. And to our Board of Education led by Mr. Jackson. He was beyond clear when I came into the school system about we need to treat our employees correct, and we need to make a culture that everybody will want to come here and be here. And one of the first things we said is we need to make sure our teachers and all of our employees are paid. So thank you for approving this historic contract that we signed. Yes. You know, when vacancies persist, students lose instructional continuity, educators are overextended, and principals are forced to manage crises instead of leading schools. So reducing vacancies restored consistency for students, strengthened school culture, and allowed educators to focus on what matters, which is teaching and learning. So this progress reflects intentional action, strong recruitment, faster hiring, improved onboarding, and a clear focus on hard-to-staff schools. One of the first things we did when we came into the district was we put dashboards up because we said we can't manage a secret. And for too long, we had too many vacancies in our most vulnerable schools. And by putting a dashboard up and monitoring closely, we were able to fill positions with strong candidates. And we're seeing the benefits in a very smooth year. And we hope that it'll result in improved academics. And we're confident that's going to happen in this year.
Improving academics, that's what we want to see, not just in Prince George's County, but all across the DMV.
Yep.
And I want to thank you, Tony, with your insights today, the rundown, the celebrity news, top stories.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow night at 9 o'clock on Fox Local. Have a great night.